We're joined by the German ambassador, Walter J. Lindner. It's a pleasure to be with him again. Now, over the past year, as we've noticed, the world, India and Germany and other parts of the globe have been going through an extreme climate crisis. It is undeniable. It's out there. You can see it in the thick blanket of smog in the national capital itself. Now, sir, in 2015, Merkel was here. She met Prime Minister Modi. The setting was sort of similar, thick blanket of smog. Now, we're talking about climate and all that, but do you see a considerable change as far as the national capital is concerned and the climate crisis is concerned? Do you think there's been an improvement as far as the measures are concerned?
You see, last time she was here, it was 2019. And I remember she came on the 1st of November. So it was the middle of smog. And the number was above 1,000. You know, we have these measurements which is, you know, healthy is until 50, and you had above 1,000. And she was in the car and I showed her this app and said, you look at this, 1,000. She said, what? This can't be true. And outside it was like the London fog, the way from the airport to the hotel. So she couldn't believe it. And then we had masks and everything. So this was a very gloomy day. And so we said, so many of the talks were dominated by what can we do and what is this a temporary thing or not. Now, in between these 2 years, of course, we had COVID. So during COVID times, if I remember well, last year and the year before, the smog was a bit less because less double burning, less
activity on the road.
Activity on the road and less industrial and construction work and whatever. Now this year is again not yet full-fledged yet, so that's why, but still, it's not full-fledged, but still we have very bad measurements. So I think everyone is, maybe that's the difference, that people are more and more conscious about. The citizens demanding you have to do something, be it limiting stubble burning or finding some alternatives to it, or limiting the access of trucks or these kind of things. So citizens are demanding more, and maybe governments are a bit more aware they have to justify what they're doing. So I don't know whether this will lead to a much better situation next year, but I hope so.
Well, we hope so too. The Supreme Court issuing a stark warning that if this is what the national capital looks like, think about the message we're sending to the outer world. Now, Germany's been very generous. We've had grants from you. We've had loans from you as far as urban development's concerned, the energy sector is concerned. I did sense a huge emphasis on solar energy. Now, solar panels are a great source. As we know, we have ample sunlight, but it's a very expensive proposition. Do you have a roadmap as to how we're going to tackle the costs and go big on this?
Well, you know, the solar panels are not that expensive. You know, if you compare it with wind energy and with water energy, the prices for solar panels went down very much. So that's to the point that in Germany we have a lot of companies which went bankrupt because the prices were not high enough. Because the production out there of China and of, you know, many countries who produce this, the competitors are pretty much out there. So I think, if you see the prices, if that's an argument, but you know the price we pay if we don't do it, it's much higher. And you know, if you have nuclear, this is much more expensive. If you know, and with the sun, I have visited quite a number of projects with solar panels on the roof, heating the hospitals, or providing energy for the batteries for the rickshaws, e-rickshaws, or for solar panel water pumps. So I find solar panels everywhere, and we finance quite a lot of them. I think this is a very useful energy source. Of course, it has to be combined with others. It has to have a mix, and you know. But I think there is no way around it in a place like this. That's why you are a founding member of the Solar Alliance, because that's what you got, and that's a reliable source. For us, it would be more difficult because we have not so many sunny days, and for us, water and wind is better. So every nation has to see what you got there. So I think a mixture of energy, renewable energy sources is the answer.
All right, and as someone who's in the fray, Mr. Modi had made the statement in Glasgow that India is going to be net zero by 2070. As someone who's in the fray and as a third-person perspective, do you think that's realistic?
Well, you know, many have said before that that India will not mention any date. Now they have mentioned a date. And 2017 might sound like very far in the future, but at least it's a date. Sure. And this is a date you can always put in front of an Indian government and say, this is what you promised. And you have to start achieving this, because there's a long way still, long way with your dependency from coal and whatever. It's a long way to go. So you have to start early, and then every year there has to be presented a progress report. So this is it's a process which has started, and for the first time you have this end of an exit of coal it's envisaged. So, and this is something, you know, COP26 in the COP process, the Paris Protocol, it's a consensus thing. So you have to have all these 100 countries, 200 countries have to decide this in a consensus. So of course there are different interests from different sides, and to get a result from this is already a big achievement. So you have to, being in politics, you have to be optimistic, otherwise you quit your job immediately.
Sure. Just on that point then, sir, a lot of governments, and this is just not in Germany or India, a lot of governments worldwide are using greenwashing as sort of a political tactic. So there'll be these pretty words about climate policies and meeting sustainable development goals, but then when it materializes into promises, there tends to be a huge gap. Do you sense that as well?
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
I sense this, and that's what we have as politicians and as observers and as journalists and as citizens. We have to hold our governments responsible. We have to say, okay, you promised this. Was this greenwashing, or was this really true? This goes for India, this goes for Germany, for any country. So that's why you have election processes, and that's why you have ministers who are responsible. You say, okay, you promised nice words in this conference. Where are we now? So that's how a democracy functions. Maybe it doesn't function like that in China, or in I don't want to mention many countries, but in those countries where you can't really say what you think. So, but in India you can say that, and in Germany too.
Genuinely appreciate your honesty on that. So that was a very affirmative no. But also switching tracks to the chips being down literally. We are facing a chip shortage globally. Germany seems to be really affected by that. BMW, Ford have had to shut some operations. Are you looking at an alternative, or are you looking at India to produce some semiconductor chips now?
You know, if I would be a developer of an alternative, I would not tell you, because that would be a intellectual property right, which will have to be very well kept. So right. I don't know. They wouldn't tell me either whether they are searching for some alternative, because this would be quite a hit alternative to it. So I don't know whether this exists or not, but it shows that the supply chains are very vulnerable. And so that's why I guess one of the results of this chip shortage, but also of the vaccination shortages and of the raw material shortages, is that we have to diversify our supply sources. So otherwise we depend on one or two sources, and if these sources are not providing, then we are stuck.
And as we wrap, sir, you had mentioned in Nagpur you have the metro, which is again got a German touch with Siemens Electricity running it, water taxis in Kochi, which is again financed by a German corporation. You mentioned Ahmedabad, there's solar panel water pumps. Now, which state government do you think, in your opinion, now you've had talks, you've been traveling, traversing different landscapes in the country as well, which state governments have been the most forthcoming?
I wouldn't have a hit list and say these are good. You know, it's not my job to pass marks. But I can tell you we work very close together with quite some states. One is Gujarat, but also Kerala, and others. So we have quite good cooperations in many of these countries, many of these states where the cooperation is not so good, we don't cooperate too much.
Right.
So it depends, but the experiences we have in Nagpur, as you mentioned, and in Mumbai and in Cochin and in many other places are pretty good. And I want to mention Cochin because I've been there several times, and the water taxi system, which we also developed and have developed, was a very good one. A good cooperation between the mayor and the state government and the private sector and the international donors. So this worked very well. The French invested there, we invested there, and now it's a pretty state-of-the-art system.
Perfect synergy there coming together. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Ambassador. Look forward to doing this very soon. In New Delhi with camera person Azam Siddiqui, this is Parmeshwar Bawa for NDTV.